Welcome students for Chemistry in Everyday Life Part 3rd. In this video, we shall study about chemistry in medicine, tranquilizers, antimicrobials and antibiotics. Let us first study about tranquilizers, which is derived from the word tranquil, which means calm. And these are the compounds which relieve or reduce the stress and anxiety, which also affects the transferring mechanism from nerves to receptors of our body. And students, these compounds are affecting the nerve fibers which are transferring the impulses towards the receptors, and the receptors can be muscles or glands of our body. Let us study examples. Noradrenaline, a neurotransmitter which plays an important role in changing the mood of a person. If noradrenaline concentration is low, then the person would be under depression. Then students, the drugs which act on mental disorders are the first tranquilizers, second antidepressants, which can also be called as mood elevators, and the third is the sedative. Now students, let us study about drugs which are used in mental disorders, and in this case we are getting the two possibilities. The first is central nervous system activity is very slow, whereas in the second case students, central nervous system activity is relatively fast. When CNS activity is slow, then we need to stimulate the activity by using the medicines, whereas if CNS activity is fast, then we need to reduce the activity by using the medicine. And if we need to reduce the central nervous system activity, then the person had to be given sedatives, which induces the sleep in an individual, thus decreasing the central nervous system activity. Whereas tranquilizers relieves the stress and anxiety within an individual. Thus students, tranquilizers and sedatives can be used interchangeably. That is, when CNS activity is low, then the antidepressant or else mood elevators such as the tranquilizer can be given, whereas when the CNS activity is relatively high, so we can give sedatives. Now students, let us understand the side effects involved in consumption of the tranquilizers. The first one is the headache, followed by weight gain, and even the vision would be blurred. Now let us see some of the examples. The first example student is the e-Gyan. In this molecule, the molecular formula is C7H14N2O4. The structure of the molecule which is given, and from this structure students, the OC double bond O NH2 on the either side of the molecule, which is obtained from carbamic acid. And what is the carbamic acid structure? It is NH2COOH. So students, we get e-Gyan by using the carbamic acid. Second example, meprobamate. In this, we are having the molecular formula C9H18N2O4, and students, the name Me is given because from the structure one methyl group which is present, whereas the name Pro has been given because we are having propyl group, that is CH3CH2CH2, propyl group, whereas the name Bamate, which corresponds to carbamic acid, that is OCONH2. So the name of the molecule in total is meprobamate. Third example is Valium, which is having fused bicyclic compound in which one is a phenyl and the second one is a 7-membered ring. And students, the molecular formula is C16H13Cl(N2O). Fourth example, it is chlor diepoxide with the molecular formulae C16H14N3OCl. So these are some of the examples which are tranquilizers. Next students, we shall study about sedatives, synthesis of barbituric acid, which can be done by using urea, that is NH2CONH2, which is made to react with malonic acid, that is COOHCH2COOH, malonic acid. Then students, this results in the formation of a ring structure which is barbituric acid. And students, from the barbituric acid very easily we can obtain vernol, and the structure of the vernol, which is a barbital, by replacing both the hydrogens of barbituric acid by ethyl group, whereas rest all the structure remains the same. So the molecule we obtain is vernol, barbital. Now students, let us study about antidepressants. As the name suggests, these are the drugs which reduces the depression by stimulating or activating the central nervous system. For example, phenelzine, which is also called as Nardil, with a molecular formula C8H12N2, and the structure, student, which is having the phenyl ring with CH2CH2 and NH2. Now let us study about antimicrobials. These are the compounds which kill the microbes. And students, under the heading of microbes, we get bacteria and even fungi. So we use antimicrobial drugs. And some of antimicrobial drugs are antibiotics, it can be antiseptics, or even it can be disinfectants. Antimicrobials are the drugs which are used to kill or stop the growth of microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi, or even viruses. Antimicrobials, student, are of three main types. The first one is the antibiotics with the examples as penicillin, chloramphenicol, and the second type is antiseptic with examples chlorozenol and bithionol, and the third type is the disinfectants. Examples are phenol and chlorine. So let's discuss the first type of antimicrobial, which is antibiotics. Antibiotic is a drug which is derived from living matter, or even students from microorganisms. and these antibiotics are used to kill or even prevent the growth of microorganisms. So various drugs which would be prescribed by the doctors for killing the bacteria, microorganisms comes under the heading of antibiotics. And the second diagram, which represents the culture of microorganisms from which we can harvest our antibiotic. For example, it is the Escherichia coli called as E. coli bacteria as a vector is harvested to synthesize the antibiotics. Now students, let us understand the spectrum of antibiotics, range of activity. And the first one is the broad spectrum antibiotics. These antibiotics, students, are effective against several microorganisms, including both gram-positive as well as gram-negative bacteria. For example, chloramphenicol and amoxicillin. And the second type is narrow spectrum antibiotic. These are effective against a specific microorganism. So students, it can be either gram-positive bacteria or else these antibiotics are specific against gram-negative bacteria. For example, it is the penicillin and olfoxin. Now let us understand the mode of action in both the case. Bactericidal antibiotics which kill the microorganisms, example penicillin and aminoglycosides, whereas student bacteriostatic antibiotic which inhibits or stops the growth of microorganism. And in this case we are having the examples as erythromycin, tetracycline and chloramphenicol. Thus, if we are using bactericidal, if the suffix is cidal, cidal, then it would be killing the microorganism. And students, if it is bacteriostatic, the suffix is static, means stationary. In this case, the growth of microorganisms is completely stopped or inhibited. Let us consider some of the examples for antibiotics. And the first one is salvarsan with the molecular formula C12H12AS2O2N2. In this case, both the phenyl rings are interlinked by means of a double bond. This, students, we can compare with azodine, which is obtained by the diazotization reaction of benzene disonium chloride with the phenol molecule. So we get yellow color dye called as azodine with the molecular formula C12H10N2O. And the next antibiotic is Prontocil with the molecular formula C12H13N5O2S. In this case also, students, we can observe the diazo link between both the phenyl rings. Prontocil gives sulfanylamide. Thus, Prontocil is a prodrug for sulfanylamide. We can synthesize the sulfanylamide by using the Prontocil antibiotic. In human body, students, Prontocil gets converted into sulfanylamide. And the next antibiotic is sulfapyridine with the molecular formula C11H11N3O2S. And the next is the penicillin, which is a bactericidal which kills the bacteria, and it is an antibiotic which has the structure given above with the molecular formula R stands for alkyl group, C9 H11N2O4X, and this penicillin was developed by Alexander Fleming. And the next example is chloramphenicol, which is a bacteriostatic which completely stops the growth of microorganisms with the molecular formula C11H12Cl2N2O5. Thus students, bacteriostatic or bactericidal antibiotics can be used to inhibit or kill the microorganisms which are present in our body. Thank you students. In the next video, we shall study about antiseptic, disinfectants and anti-fertility drugs. Thank you.